There is a mistake many make on the path of healing. They believe it is enough to sit with the woman who gave them life, to speak to her, forgive her, blame her, or try to understand her. They confuse the outer mother with the inner one, but the truth is far more subtle and more haunting. The mother you must face, the one who holds the key to your liberation, is not the person who lives or lived outside you, but the mother who now resides within you. She has become part of your inner architecture, her voice, her gaze, her silence. These did not pass away with time. They rooted themselves into your psyche, grew tendrils, and wrapped themselves around your instinct, your sense of worth, your very ability to love and be loved. She lives in the way you speak to yourself, in how you shrink when confronted, in how you crave approval or reject intimacy or sabotage joy. She lives in your fear of failure and in your discomfort with being seen. You do not see her, but you hear her whisper through your choices. You feel her when you retreat from your own life, and the tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives reacting to this internal mother without ever naming her presence. They seek healing through external gestures, never realizing the mother wound has become their shadow, hidden deep beneath their personality. To face this internal image is an act of profound courage, for she is not only mother, she is also your first love, your first God, your first judge. To question her is to question the foundation of your world. It is to walk into the sacred temple of your inner life and say, "This voice, which I have mistaken for my own, whose is it really?" You may find she was gentle, but too afraid to let you be strong. You may find she was cruel, and you learned to survive by being invisible. You may find she was absent, and you built yourself around emptiness. Whatever the story, it lives in you still, not as a memory, but as a law. And unless you face that inner figure, your choices will never be fully your own. You must bring her into the light, observe her with clarity, speak to her if you must, rage at her if you need, but most of all, understand her. Not to judge her, but to separate from her, to differentiate, to know, I am not this echo. I am not her sorrow. I am not her fear. Healing begins not when you confront your mother, but when you confront the idea of her that rules your inner world. That is the mother you must meet, not across the dinner table, but in the hidden chambers of your soul. Before the world had a name, before language, before even memory, there was the mother. Not merely as a person, but as presence, total, consuming, inescapable. She was the entire cosmos to the infant mind, the sun and moon of consciousness. It is from her that the very first impressions of existence were formed. Her body was the first landscape, her voice the first music, her gaze the first mirror, and so she became the foundation stone of the psyche itself. Long before you knew you were a self, you were knowing her. And what you received or did not receive from her was not merely care, it was reality. If she was warm, the world felt safe. If she was anxious, the world became dangerous. If she was inconsistent, the world became unknowable. Your nervous system, your relational patterns, your inner voice, all were cast in her image. What she taught you, explicitly or silently, about love, need, power, vulnerability, and worth, became the laws by which your inner world operates. You may grow, leave her home, forget her voice, or even sever the physical bond, but her imprint remains. It is etched into your emotional reflexes, embedded in your fears, wrapped around your sense of identity. To your deeper mind, she is not only mother, she is the axis of being, the archetype that all other relationships orbit, friendships, lovers, even your relationship with yourself. They are shaped in her shadow, touched by her absence or her excess. If she saw you, truly saw you, then you may carry a sense of innate worth. If she did not or could not, you may chase that feeling for the rest of your life without knowing what you are looking for. If she was overbearing, you may grow into someone who fears their own power, afraid that asserting your will is a form of betrayal. If she was wounded, you may carry her sorrow like a second skin, mistaking it for empathy when it is really inherited grief. She is the original lens through which you saw the world, and that lens still colors your perception long after you believe you become your own person. This is the truth many resist, for it means that your suffering is not merely situational, nor easily resolved. It means that your struggles are anchored in the most ancient layers of your being, and it is in those depths that healing must begin. To recognize her foundational role is not to idolize her nor to blame her endlessly. It is to understand that she is your beginning, and that every life must return to its beginning if it is to be rewritten. You cannot build a new self upon old, unconscious ground. You must dig, excavate, remember. You must see how her voice became your own, how her gaze became your mirror, and how your sense of who you are was shaped in response to who she was. Only in doing so can you begin to separate your soul from her shadow, and finally step into your own becoming. The most powerful wounds are the ones we cannot see. They do not bleed and they do not scar in ways the eye can trace. They live in silence, beneath language, rooted in the soul like ancient roots beneath a forest floor. The mother wound is one such wound. And what makes it so insidious is that it rarely appears as a wound at all. It hides in patterns, in moods, in the quiet repetition of pain that feels like fate. You may think you are simply too sensitive, too needy, too angry, or too detached. You may believe your struggles with love, trust, or self-worth are just flaws of character or personal failures. But often, these are not flaws. They are symptoms, echoes of an early, unseen injury. A wound wrapped in silence, shaped by the emotional landscape your mother offered you or denied you. The mother wound is not always born of cruelty. Sometimes it is born of absence, or neglect, or fear, or overprotection. Sometimes it is not what she did, but what she could not give. You see, in those early years, the mother is not just a caregiver. She is the mirror in which the child first sees themselves. If that mirror is cracked, distorted, or covered with shadows, the child learns not who they are, but who they must become to receive love, or simply to survive. The self is bent to fit the mother's gaze, and when this bending becomes habit, it disappears into the unconscious. You forget you ever changed. You believe this shape is who you are, but it is not. And yet this hidden wound does not remain passive. It manifests. It lives through you. It speaks in how you react to rejection, how you cling or flee in relationships, how you sabotage your own joy, how you fear being a burden, or demand perfection from yourself to avoid shame. These are not random behaviors. They are adaptations, old survival codes still running beneath the surface of your life. That is the power of the unconscious. It governs from the shadows. Until it is seen, it rules. and this is why the mother wound must be faced, not with judgment, but with awareness. It cannot be healed through intellect alone. It must be felt. It must be grieved. It must be brought up from the depths like some forgotten relic, no longer hidden in the dark, but held in the light. You must ask yourself, what did I learn I could not be in order to be loved? What emotions did I bury to keep her close? What parts of myself did I exile just to belong? The answers may not come easily, for this wound is layered, disguised, often defended by shame. But if you can look with honest eyes, if you can endure the discomfort of remembrance, you will begin to see the pattern unravel. And in that unraveling, something new stirs, the possibility of a self not born in response to pain, but to truth. Healing is a sacred act, not a courtroom. It does not ask for verdicts, only for vision. To heal the mother wound is not to sit in judgment, to tally wrongs, or to cast the woman who bore you into the role of villain. It is not an act of vengeance, nor of rebellion. True healing requires something far more difficult, the courage to see clearly. It asks not for blame, but for understanding, not of her alone, but of the psychic imprint she left behind. The soul is shaped not only by events, but by the meaning they leave, and the meaning a mother leaves is rarely simple. You may think you know her, you remember her laugh, her temper, her distance, or her devotion, but what matters more than who she was, in fact, is who she became within your inner world. That is the mother whose legacy you live. That is the mother whose echo determines how you love, how you feel safe, how you speak to yourself in the quiet moments of your life. Blame is a defense. It gives you the illusion of separation without the depth of understanding. It protects you from feeling the tangled sorrow of the truth, that your mother was likely both wounded and wounding, that she may have loved you and failed you in the same breath, that she passed on to you not just her nurture, but her unresolved fears, her inherited pain, her unconscious patterns, just as someone likely did to her. To understand her imprint is to see the transmission of pain across generations. It is to recognize that you may be carrying what never began with you. Her silence may have taught you to suppress your voice. Her volatility may have trained you to appease and adapt. Her fear may have become your caution. Her need for control, your perfectionism. These are not merely behaviors. They are the shape of your inheritance. And when you see this, truly see it, you begin to step outside the cycle. You no longer react blindly. You no longer wear her story as your own. You begin to differentiate, to sort what is yours from what is hers. This is not disloyalty. This is the birth of the self. It may feel like betrayal to question her legacy, but it is not. It is an act of profound respect to say, I will not let your pain define me. You are not healing to hurt her. You are healing to find out who you are beneath the roles you adopted in her presence. And in doing so, you may come to know her not only as mother, but as a woman. Fallible, human, shaped by her own wounds, perhaps never given the tools to transform them. This is what it means to heal her imprint, not to erase her nor to worship her, but to integrate the truth, to carry what was nourishing and release what was not, and in doing so, to finally become your own. Within the depths of the human psyche, the mother is not merely a person. She becomes something far greater, a symbol, a force, a godlike figure that shapes the very contours of the soul. From the earliest moments of life, she is the original source of meaning, the primal presence from which all other relationships derive their significance. She is the nurturer, the protector, the creator, and sometimes the destroyer. This image transcends flesh and bone, becoming an archetype, a powerful symbolic energy that governs how you understand safety, love, and existence itself. Because she is this symbolic God, she carries with her an immense power, the power to create identity, but also the power to imprison it. When you carry the mother as an archetype, you carry an image that is not fixed in reality, but formed by unconscious fantasies, fears, and hopes. You do not simply remember the woman who fed or cared for you. You carry a myth, a legend within you that tells a story about what life is, who you are, and how the world will treat you. This archetypal mother can be nurturing, comforting, and sustaining, yet she can also be tyrannical, suffocating, or capricious. Because she exists beyond the limits of the personal, she is never simply mother. She is the sacred womb and the devouring monster, the light that gives life and the shadow that threatens to consume. She represents creation and destruction in one figure. Her power is absolute in the child's psyche because, at that early stage, there is no separation. The child is not yet a self. It is a fragment caught in the orbit of this overwhelming figure. To heal, therefore, one must undertake the difficult task of deconstructing this archetype. You must peel back the layers of myth and projection that have accumulated around her image. You must see her not as the all-powerful God or the perfect nurturer, but as a complex human being with limitations, fears, and wounds of her own. This process is not an act of desecration, but of liberation. It frees you from the unconscious chains forged by an idealized or demonized mother. Deconstructing this symbolic mother means bringing consciousness to what has been unconscious. It means recognizing that many of your deepest beliefs about yourself and the world come from this mythic figure. The anger you feel, the guilt you carry, the yearning that never ceases. All of these are entangled with the image of the Mother God you have internalized. Until you face this image, until you understand its origins and its hold on you, you remain bound by her invisible rule. Only by dismantling the archetype piece by piece can you begin to reclaim your autonomy. You begin to see that the mother within is not absolute. She is part of a story, not the whole story. And once the archetype is deconstructed, a new relationship to the self, to love, and to life can emerge, one grounded not in myth, but in reality and choice. This is the path from unconscious captivity to conscious freedom, from being the child of the Mother God to being the author of your own soul. There is a silent force that binds many to their suffering, a force so subtle it often goes unnoticed. Emotional loyalty to the mother. This loyalty is not a simple affection or respect. It is a deep, unconscious allegiance forged in the earliest years of life, a bond so profound that it can hold the soul captive long after the child has grown. It is the invisible chain that ties you to inherited pain, to patterns not your own, and to a story that was written before you had the power to write your own. This loyalty is born from a primal need to survive, love, to secure belonging. When a child looks to the mother, it is not only for nurture, but for validation, safety, and acceptance. To maintain her love, even imperfect or conditional, the child learns to align with her world, her emotions, her fears, her wounds. This alignment often requires silence, repression, and sacrifice of self. The child learns to carry her burdens, to take on her pain as their own, and to defend her against all threats, even when those threats are their own truth and liberation. Because of this loyalty, the child's psyche becomes a vassal for the mother's unresolved suffering. Her grief becomes their grief. Her shame becomes their shame. Her anger becomes their shadow. And so pain is passed down not through words or stories alone, but through the very structure of the soul. It is inherited like a family heirloom, wrapped in devotion and disguised as love. This loyalty also breeds a form of blindness. To question the mother, to distance oneself emotionally, can feel like betrayal. The inner voice warns, if I reject her, I lose her love, and with it, my very survival. This fear creates a psychic stalemate. The self is caught between the desire to heal and the instinct to remain loyal, to protect the mother's image and to preserve the bond at any cost. And yet, healing requires breaking this silence. It requires the courage to recognize that loyalty to inherited pain is not true loyalty at all. True loyalty to the mother is to see her fully, to honor her humanity, and to free yourself from the unconscious obligation to carry her wounds as your own. To heal is to say, I love you, but I will no longer suffer in your place. I will honor your story, but I must live mine. This does not sever the bond, but transforms it. It creates space for compassion. Compassion that is not entangled with sacrifice or denial. Compassion that acknowledges the limits of love given and received, the wounds passed down, and the courage needed to break the cycle. Only when emotional loyalty shifts from unconscious bondage to conscious choice can the inherited pain begin to dissolve. The soul can finally exhale, and the self can emerge, not as a shadow of the mother's suffering, but as a new, autonomous light. This is the threshold of healing, where loyalty becomes liberation. To reclaim the self, one must journey into a dark and often feared territory, the realm of guilt, fear, and grief. These emotions are not mere obstacles to be avoided or overcome lightly. They are the gates guarding the deeper truth of who you are. They arise from the shadow of the mother wound, from the tangled web of early experience where love and pain were inseparable. To heal, you must be willing to face these emotions with honesty and courage, for they hold the key to your wholeness. Guilt is the silent tether that binds you to past loyalties and unspoken betrayals. It whispers that your desire for independence is disloyalty, that your anger is unforgivable, that your need for self-care is selfish. This guilt is often not your own, but a residue of the mother's pain or the unspoken rules imposed upon you. Yet it lodges deep within the psyche and shapes your every choice. To face guilt is to bring it into the light, to name its source, and to distinguish what truly belongs to you from what was inherited. Only then can guilt lose its power to bind and begin to transform into responsibility, not for her wounds, but for your own healing. Fear, too, is an ancient sentinel. It is the fear of abandonment, rejection, and loss. Fear that the self is not enough, that love is conditional, that safety is fragile. This fear often masquerades as control or perfectionism, but beneath it lies a trembling child longing to be seen and held without conditions. To face fear means to sit with the vulnerability it exposes, to tolerate uncertainty, and to trust in the emergence of a self that is whole despite imperfection. It is the courageous act of stepping into the unknown, knowing that to grow you must risk losing the false securities that have kept you small. Grief is the great mourner, the companion of loss and separation. It arises when you acknowledge what was never given, the nurturing, the acceptance, the safety you longed for. Grief is the recognition of absence, the heart's lament for what might have been. It is painful, raw, and relentless, but it is also purifying. To grieve is to honor the reality of your experience without denial or defense. It is the surrender that allows healing to begin, the opening through which the self can breathe freely again. Together, guilt, fear, and grief form a triad of passage. They are the emotional crucible in which the self is forged anew. To face them is to reclaim your soul from the shadows where it has been trapped. It is to peel away the layers of shame and silence that have hidden your truth. It is to say, I will no longer carry your pain as my own. I will feel these emotions fully, so that I may know myself wholly. This is not an easy journey. It demands bravery and patience. But within it lies the promise of transformation. A self no longer fragmented by hidden wounds, but integrated, resilient, and free. Only through facing guilt, fear, and grief can you reclaim the self and step fully into the life that is truly yours. To truly begin the journey toward individuation, the emergence of your authentic self, you must see the mother not as an idealized figure of perfection, nor as a demon to blame, but simply as a human being. This is a subtle but profound shift, one that demands you dismantle the myths and projections that have long surrounded her image in your inner world. It is a task both painful and liberating, for it strips away illusions to reveal the complex, flawed, and deeply vulnerable woman who shaped your earliest experiences. The mother, in the unconscious mind, often becomes a symbol larger than life, a goddess or a tyrant, representing ultimate nurturing or ultimate rejection. These extreme images are understandable given the intensity of the early bond and the depth of imprinting. But they are also imprisoning. To hold the mother as a mythic figure is to remain caught in a polarized story, unable to move beyond the binary of worship or resentment. This stunts growth and keeps the self tethered to unconscious patterns. Seeing the mother as human means recognizing her limitations. She is not omnipotent, not all-knowing, and not always available. She carries her own wounds, fears, and contradictions. She may have loved deeply, yet failed in ways that caused pain. She may have tried to protect, but also to control. She may have been exhausted, overwhelmed, or lost. To see her fully is to acknowledge these truths without needing to soften them with idealization or harden them with blame. This humanization is essential because it creates the possibility of empathy, not sentimental but real. It allows you to hold her as both a giver and a taker, as both strong and fragile, and in doing so you begin to separate her from the archetype she became in your psyche. This separation is crucial. It allows you to reclaim parts of yourself that were disowned or sacrificed in relation to her. It allows you to say, she is not my captor, she is a fellow traveler who made her own journey as best she could. Moreover, this clarity frees you from repeating inherited patterns unconsciously. When the mother remains a myth, your reactions to her are exaggerated and automatic. You may swing between idolizing and resenting her, never finding peace. But when you see her as a human, you recognize the complexity behind her actions and you gain the power to respond from your own center, not from conditioned reflex. Individuation requires this act of seeing, to peel back the layers of unconscious projection and meet the mother in her humanity. It is through this encounter that you step out of the shadow of inherited narratives and step into your own light. You begin to build a relationship with the self that is grounded in reality, not illusion. This process is not an abandonment of love, but a deepening of it. A love that accepts imperfection, embraces complexity, and fosters freedom. In seeing the mother as human, you reclaim your own humanity. And in reclaiming your humanity, you move closer to the wholeness that is your birthright. Healing begins with a profound act of separation. Not the physical or external kind, but a separation of the self from the many roles, stories, and expectations that have been projected onto you, often before you even understood who you were. These roles are like masks handed down from the mother and her world, shaped by her hopes, fears, and the cultural scripts she embodied. They form an invisible prison, confining the authentic self beneath layers of obligation, identity, and duty that are not truly yours. From the moment of birth, you are not only a child, but also a reflection of your mother's needs and dreams. You became the good child, the caretaker, the strong one, or the invisible one, because these were the roles that ensured her survival or emotional stability. These roles are often unconsciously adopted to maintain connection, to secure love, or to avoid rejection. But they come at a cost, the suppression of the self's unique voice, desires, and truths. To heal is to recognize this dynamic, to see clearly how your identity has been shaped not only by your own essence, but by the expectations laid upon you. This process requires deep honesty. It asks you to question, which parts of me are genuinely mine, and which parts have I taken on because they were needed by another? Which behaviors are authentic expressions, and which are defenses or adaptations? Separating from these projected roles is not an act of rebellion, but an act of reclamation. It is the reclaiming of the self from the shadows where it has been hidden, where it has been sacrificed to the needs of the mother and the collective patterns she represents. This separation is a painful but necessary shedding, like a snake casting its old skin to allow new growth. In this process, you may face resistance from within and without. The roles may feel familiar, safe, even essential, because they have protected you. Letting them go can provoke fear and uncertainty, as if you are stepping into a void. Yet it is precisely this void that holds the potential for renewal. It is the space where your authentic self can emerge, no longer bound by the weight of others' expectations. Healing means learning to stand in that space, to meet yourself without masks, to feel your true desires and fears, and to honor them without guilt. It means embracing the freedom to say no to what does not serve your growth, and yes to what resonates with your deepest being. It is the conscious creation of a self that is not a reflection, but an origin. This journey of separation ultimately leads to integration. By disentangling from the projected roles, you do not become fragmented but whole. You build a self that is solid, rooted in truth rather than illusion. The healing self is free, not because it denies connection or love, but because it loves from a place of authenticity, not obligation. In this way, healing is the courageous act of reclaiming identity from the past and stepping into the fullness of who you truly are. Liberation is not a gentle unfolding, but a fierce confrontation. It arises only when you turn directly toward the wound, the raw, tender place within you, shaped by the early relationship with your mother, the imprint that has silently governed your life. This wound, often buried beneath layers of denial, defense, and unconscious loyalty, holds the shadow of pain, rejection, and unfulfilled longing. To face it is to meet a part of yourself that you may have feared, avoided, or misunderstood, but which must be acknowledged if freedom is to be found. Confronting the wound means more than recalling past hurts. It means immersing yourself in the emotional truth of those experiences. It is sitting with the ache of abandonment, the sting of neglect, the confusion of conditional love. It is naming the silent burdens you carry, the guilt, the shame, the grief that have become entangled with your sin. It dismantles illusions and forces you to witness the parts of your soul you may have wished to keep hidden. Yet in this confrontation lies the seed of liberation, for only by bringing the wound into the light can its power over you begin to dissolve. Darkness loses its hold when seen clearly. When you allow yourself to fully feel and understand this pain, it transforms from a source of unconscious suffering into a doorway for growth. The wound becomes a teacher, revealing truth about your patterns, your fears, and the ways you have unconsciously repeated old stories. But liberation requires more than acknowledgement. It requires choice. To confront the wound is to stand at a crossroads where you may continue to live within the inherited narrative or break free by choosing your own story. This choice is radical. It demands that you claim authorship over your life rather than remain trapped in the script written by past pain and projection. Choosing your own story means defining yourself on your own terms, embracing your full complexity, and stepping into the unknown possibility of who you might become. This act of choosing is an assertion of sovereignty. It is saying, I am more than the pain I carry. I will not be defined solely by my wounds. It is a commitment to transformation, to crafting a life that reflects your true desires, values, and potential. Liberation is not the erasure of the wound, but its integration, holding the pain and the power within one's being, allowing both to coexist without domination. This path is neither easy nor linear. It may bring moments of despair and doubt, but with each step of facing and choosing, the self expands, becoming more resilient and authentic. The chains of unconscious loyalty, guilt, and fear loosen, and the spirit breathes more freely. In confronting the wound and choosing your own story, you reclaim your power and open the way toward wholeness. Liberation is born not from escape or denial, but from courageous embrace, the embrace of your deepest truth, and the freedom to rewrite your destiny. The journey through the shadow of the mother wound is neither quick nor easy, but it is essential. True healing and liberation arise only when you bravely face the hidden pain, dismantle the illusions, and reclaim your authentic self beyond the roles and projections imposed upon you. By seeing the mother as human, embracing the tangled emotions of guilt, fear, and grief, and choosing your own story, you step into a life of conscious freedom and profound wholeness. This path honors both the wounds you carry and the strength you hold, the strength to transform pain into power and to become the author of your own soul.